What's up guys, it's time for another top 10 list, and this one is going to be a little bit different because it's not based on a franchise or a brand, it's based on an entire company really, and basically everything that I bought from that company because, well, frankly, NECA stuff is among my most watched content on the channel. My top 2 videos are NECA stuff, and they routinely get the most views out of almost everything that I do, so clearly people are at least halfway interested in what I have to say, and this year has been pretty crazy as far as NECA stuff goes, and I bought every Predator that they released, I bought every Alien that they released, I have all the Gremlins, I have all the Godzilla figures, I of course got all the TMNT stuff, and that's about where I stop. I don't get into the horror stuff too much because despite that being one of NECA's big things, it's not my thing when it comes to toys. I love the franchises that they represent as far as toys go, but I'm not big into buying horror stuff. So this list is basically going to be the top 10 NECA things that I bought this year that kind of correspond to my interests. So Predator, Alien, Gremlins, Godzilla, Ninja Turtles, that kind of stuff. So you can probably surmise where this list is going to go. Probably going to be pretty heavy on the Predator side of the house, but I am incredibly happy with damn near everything they put out this year. It's been a just hit after hit after hit kind of thing. So let's jump right into it, see what we've got on this list. There are going to be a couple spots that have maybe a few figures just because they kind of belong together. So you might know what's happening there. But we're going to start things off with number 10 and the only Alien figure on my list, and one that kind of brings together the entire arcade AVP line for me just from a personal standpoint. So number 10 is the Chrysalis Xenomorph. This thing is, well, it's just an amazing action figure. It looks exactly like its in-game counterpart. It has the crazy head sculpt on it, just the colors, the paint, the sculpt, the size of this thing. That line in particular, that subline, was a huge hit for me, and this is my favorite figure that came out of that entire line. I'm a big fan of the Predators that came out of that. I'm a big fan of all the Xenos, but this thing in particular was the one that I waited for, the one that I wanted to see the most, and they absolutely just nailed it. Number 9 is the first Predator on the list, and this one goes back to towards the very beginning of the year, and a Predator that I thought at the time was probably going to be a little higher on my list, but then we got a lot of figures that I just think kind of eclipsed this one over time. So number 9 is the Golden Angel Predator. So of course the Elder from Predator 2, but in his younger, more yellow form. And this figure is a good example of how they can take existing parts, add some new stuff, give it a nice fresh coat of paint and an Ultimate style body, and just make an amazing action figure. This is a version of this Predator that I've wanted to see for a really long time, and as a big fan of this particular Predator and of that movie, although this really doesn't have a lot to do with that movie, it was nice to finally get this guy, and they absolutely did a fantastic job of bringing this one to life in plastic. Number 8 is the first of a few entries that will have the multiple figure aspect of things, because I couldn't give this to just one particular release because they're so similar. So number 8 goes to the entirety of the Ultimate Gremlins line that they've done this year. So the Ultimate Gremlin, Ultimate Stripe, Ultimate Gamer Gremlin, that kind of thing, the Winter 2-pack figures. These things are just perfect representations of those characters from the movie in plastic. There's really no other way to describe them. I think they are fantastic representation in a toy line of that type of character, and the accessories that these things come with are just phenomenal. They work so well for these figures and for other figures. They come with just tons and tons of little things, weird little callbacks, weird little references to the movie. It's that kind of stuff that NECA throws into their figures that really gets me. And I mean, at this point, I think I have 8 or 9 Gremlins, so they've definitely gotten me with this particular line. It's just really hard to pick one, so we're just gonna give it to all of them. Number 7 is another instance of multiple figures, because this is definitely one where it really is difficult to pick the two because they are, again, so similar. So number 7 is Emissary 1 and Emissary 2 Predator from The Predator. These things are, of course, from deleted scenes that were never going to be in the movie, and yet they are some of my favorite Predator designs in a while, just because of how very different they are. The sculpt on these particular figures is amazing. The colors on them are just vivid and wild, and everything about them is just incredibly well done. They're incredibly fun figures to pose. They move really, really well. The sculpt is great. The paint is top notch, and they are just different from the overall majority of Predator figures that you can't help but not like these things. From the second I got the first one, I knew that it was going to be a painful wait until I got the second one, and they were just much more fun to play around with than I ever expected them to be for designs that, well, really I've never seen before. Number 6 is another Predator, and I did say there were going to be a few on this list, and this is my favorite Kenner homage figure that they have done in quite some time. It's still never going to top the Clan Leader for me just for nostalgia purposes, but as far as what NECA has produced in this modern toy line, the Laser Shot Predator is just one of the best things they have done this year, hands down. It integrates the light design that we saw with the Lab Escape Predator, and it just has the craziest, most wild sculpt. Paint apps are through the roof, tons of fantastic accessories, and there is just nothing to dislike about this Predator unless you're not someone who has any nostalgia for the Kenner line, and I have a tremendous amount of nostalgia for that line. So to get these modern, updated, beefy, monstrous Predators in this style is just a winning scenario for me, and this one is absolutely a must-have. Number 5 is a figure that I kind of struggled with where to place him because he comes in a 4-pack, and I wasn't sure if I was going to do the entire 4-pack or not, and I'm not going to. And I also was curious if I was going to be able to differentiate between the small figure and the large figure, and well, I think I have, but it's still a close call. So number 5 is the SDCC 4-pack version of the 1990 movie Shredder figure. And it was really hard to not put the quarter scale in here with it, but I think at the end of the day, for my purposes, for my collection, it's a 6-inch figure, 6-inch-ish figure, and it just goes better along with what I collect. And it's an amazing action figure, and for my money at this point, this is the definitive Shredder figure, I think. It's going to be really hard to top this with anything because the longer I've gone along with collecting and the more I've watched old Turtle stuff, the movie really resonates with me so much more than anything else. And this Shredder design is probably what I think of most when I think of the Shredder now. As crazy as that might sound, this is probably my preferred look, and there is no denying that they absolutely knocked it out of the park. The rest of the set is fantastic as well, but realistically, when it came down to it, the figure that I was instantly drawn to was Shredder, and for damn good reason. Number 4 is another exclusive, an NYCC exclusive, so that one kind of narrows it down a bit, and that would be the Yellow Lantern Predator figure. Now, this thing obviously comes with an equally, if not more amazing, Green Lantern figure, but this Predator alone had to be separated from me just because he looks so fantastic. He integrates parts from the Battle Armor Lost Predator, which is one of my favorite NECA Predator figures in general, just from a design standpoint. He has a load of translucent plastic. He comes with a tremendous amount of awesome accessories, and there is just something about the combination of Yellow Lantern and Predator that absolutely does it for me. And it's pretty obvious right now that I'm a huge fan of the NECA Predator line, and this thing is just the culmination of a lot of different things that really, really work together for me personally to make an amazingly fun, cool, and very, very different and kind of standout figure amongst the pack when it comes to Predator stuff. Number 3 is kind of the counterpart to that Predator, only a little bit more, and it's one of those multi-instance type of entries because I couldn't again at the end of the day just kind of separate these out. They all go together, and realistically they belong together because they show us that NECA should have the DC license, or at least as far as I'm concerned at a retail level they should have the DC license after what they showed us at San Diego and at New York Comic-Con, because the Armored Batman, Superman, and Green Lantern are realistically the best DC figures that I've ever owned, and that comes from someone who doesn't really own very many, as someone who doesn't want to own very many because most of them are not very good. So these are just sublime action figures is really the only way I can describe them. When I got that Superman and Batman initially, I was absolutely blown away, but when I got the other Batman and of course that Green Lantern, I was pretty much instantly in love with all of them. They are incredibly well sculpted. There is a lot of parts reuse, but that's not too bad. Paint is fantastic, just the overall look, the heft, the size, the build of these figures, the soft goods, and then In the case of the Green Lantern in particular, the tremendous amount of accessories that it comes with is just an amazing set. Of course, we're not going to get any more of these, so they make for a very small contained 4-pack of figures, but they were absolutely not going to be left alone on this list. I had to put them together because they're just too cool. Number 2 is a very recent release from NECA, maybe the must-have NECA thing in quite some time, and you obviously know what I'm talking about here. Number 2 is another instance of multiple figures because they have to be together. Number 2 is Bebop and Rocksteady from the Target Toon Turtle line. It goes without saying that these are the hot item right now. Everybody is still trying to get them. I lucked out and got mine relatively early in the rush, and I am so satisfied with them. The paint, the sculpt, everything about them just is exactly what I've wanted in cartoon Bebop and Rocksteady since the 80s, really. There is no real complaining on these guys outside of some slight articulation concerns here and there, but as far as the looks go, they absolutely nailed it, and these are what I have wanted for so long. It's hard to have denied them any kind of place on the list, and they were going to be number 1, but I just had to edge them out just a little bit because of how much more fun I had with my top pick for the year. And that being, number 1, the figure that when I got him, I was honestly just blown away, and I played with it and played with it and played with it and played with it some more and continued to mess around with it. I was just kind of over the moon with this thing when I got it. It is, as of now, far and away my most viewed review on the channel by a tremendous margin. It's not even close. We're talking 100,000 view difference almost. The figure that is number 1 for me as far as what NECA has made this year is the Predator, Assassin Predator. And I know this might be kind of controversial because this figure seems to be kind of controversial because of the character, but I love this thing as a toy, as an action figure, as just something to play with. I think it is an amazing release from them. It comes with a solid array of accessories. It is absolutely massive, and despite having that weird leg system that they had to give this Predator, NECA managed to make him stand up just fine. I was able to get him to balance really well, put him into some awesome poses, and it was just so much fun to play with. That's really what it comes down to. This figure, for me, this year was the most fun NECA toy that I have and I played with, and still continues to be. Regardless of what that movie is or isn't, this figure is just fantastic. I really love it. So that is my top 10, well, probably closer to top 20 at this point based on all those multiple entry situations going on. My top 10 list for NECA stuff this year. No Godzillas appeared on the list, but there were some pretty solid entries, and that was the one thing that I really fought trying to keep honor on the list. But at the end of the day, there were just so many amazing Predators that everything just sort of fell by the wayside. So let me know what you guys think of my list. Let me know what you think of my number 1 pick for sure, and I would love to know what you guys have on your list for favorite NECA stuff this year, whether you have a full top 10 or not. So that's it, guys. I'll catch you next time.